Right, well, listen, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Canary Room. It's a Canary Room with a difference, because this man here, well, there aren't canaries. You can probably hear them in the background. Many of you who keep birds will instantly recognise this man's face. It is, of course, Mr. Peter Harrison. Peter, welcome to the Canary Room in your room.
No, you're very welcome.
In your room full of some incredible zebra finches. So over the next half an hour or so, we're going to follow Peter's story. We're going to look at some incredible birds. This man's been, at the top of the game in zebra finches for, well, he doesn't look old enough, but it's been a while. It's been a while,
and
and his modesty will we won't let him be too modest, because he has achieved an incredible amount with these absolutely divine birds. I have already told myself when I came here today, there's no more room in the Canary Room, so there's no zebra finches coming in the Canary Room. I've made myself that promise. Pete, remind me of that as I leave today. Remind me there's no more room.
I will do.
As always, everyone, grab yourself a cuppa, sit back and enjoy what promises to be one hell of an episode. So, Peter, it's great. It's great to be here, mate. And it's great to see these incredible birds. And it's fair to say this is it's a lifetime's work in here. But it's not just one generation that have been into birds. Although you are the zebra finch man. Your father was a big inspiration, and he was a racing pigeon guy.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was very successful racing pigeons. And I guess I in my initial start with birds, he was very influential because he understood about livestock, pedigree livestock. So I didn't really waste too much time with lower grade birds. I managed to get hold of stock from the best people that I possibly could, and equally meet people who had knowledge in the fields that I was interested in. So, after I started with them in 1975 in a garden shed, a wooden shed, next to the lawnmower and tea chests and things like that. And I had some canaries, pair of zebra finches, some bronze-winged manakins, I think. And it was a bit of a craze going around the local schools. I think fathers were using little Johnny as a sort of wedge for the wives to have aviaries and such like. So the estate I grew up on, there were lots of juniors with different sorts of birds. So I was more fortunate because my dad had that knowledge and said, look, if you're going to do something, decide which birds you like and get the very best, because obviously feeding or looking after birds takes the same time to look after substandard ones as it does for good ones. So I suppose that really got me going in the right channel from day one, really. So yeah, that's where it started. And went through sort of the juniors with border canaries and zebra finches. Then when I got to about 18, 19, when I first started working, I just had a best in show as a novice with the zebra finches at one of the bigger clubs in Birmingham, and basically knew that it was time to decide. I hadn't got the time, and obviously you needed lots of different things, as in double, different mixes of seed, different show cages, 2 bird rooms, shows. The bigger shows would clash. So basically I chose the zebra finches, and even though I do have a passion for border canaries, Norwich canaries, it was zebra finches from there on in, really. So.
And I think the canary world is probably a worse place for that, but a better place, because it's bloody competitive enough as it is. And if we'd have had another Peter Harrison in there doing what you've done with zebra finches and canaries, then...
I couldn't really say that, because obviously I have great admiration for people with canaries, and the knowledge that I was given, particularly when I was younger, from local canary breeders, and also national breeders of canaries, which were very important, really, in, I'd like to think, not just the development of my own personal birds, but I've had a big influence, really, on zebra finches, throughout the world, indirectly, because the methods or the knowledge that those people used with canaries I tried to. I don't know whether I did a very good job or a great job, but I tried to implement that into zebra finches, particularly with the use of feather. So, yeah, that was a big part really of how it started really for me. And obviously, you know, you've got to walk before you run. So I had a lot of time really, you know, improving my own birds and getting beat with, you know, people that had better birds than me, which, you know, I've always said, even today, there's nothing better than actually getting beat, because it makes you realise that, you know, you've got to keep improving. You can't stand still with livestock. You know, it's a constant improvement.
And I think there's a couple of things in that, isn't there, Peter? I think the first thing is, you know, that we can learn from different aspects of the hobby. So, you know, you talk about a lot of your sort of founding knowledge around feather coming from canary breeders and vice versa. You know, it doesn't matter what you keep in terms of a variety. You can learn from different aspects of the hobby. And I guess the second thing there, which is that sort of that competitive element, just to keep driving and can keep improving, and I think that's probably, you know, if you look at some of the outstanding fanciers, and you're too modest to say this, but, you know, recognised in Cage and Aviary Birds as, you know, in the top 25, I think number 5 in the top 25 breeders of all time, behind a man that you give an awful lot of credit to, particularly in the early days, and that man's, of course, the godfather of border canaries, Phil Warne.
Yeah, I mean, Phil, you know, I met Phil when I was about 16 or 17, and it has been documented before, but, you know, it was very influential for me. I didn't realise, you know, at the time how influential it would be, but meeting Phil did open the world of use of feathers and the world of developing things into shapes and features on birds, which I thought till I met him, I had some sort of understanding of what a better bird looked like or what made a better bird. But on meeting Phil within, you know, it only took probably about, well, a 2-hour visit. I learned more in that 2-hour visit with him than probably I'd learned in 10 years of keeping birds, you know, and probably even to this day, you know. I would say that even though I've met a lot of great people in birds and zebra finches, you know, I would have too many people to thank in zebra finches, you know. I wouldn't like to leave any of them out. But Phil had the greatest influence on me and certainly on my birds. Phil was something special. That's what I'd say, and still is, you know, something special.
Fantastic stuff. Well, let's have a closer look at some of these things, Pete, and you can talk us through them. I love listening to the sound of these little things. It reminds me. I was going to say it reminds me of my zebra finches.
I don't hear them. I don't hear it. You know, I'm not used to it. I don't hear them.
It is. It's a lovely little sound, and they're in good fettle, and they're in good fettle in a new room, Pete.
Yeah.
It's new room, lovely and airy. And you mentioned the number of cages before. Just off camera.
I think there's 108 cages in here.
108 cages.
I think so, yeah.
It's a lot bigger than the canary room, and it's got just a few more cages than the canary room in it. So that is we're coming towards the start of the breeding season now. And we've got behind us, and we'll have a little look at these birds. We'll have a look at some of them individually. And got behind us, there's a real order in here, Pete, isn't there, around the different colour mutations? And as we were sort of talking off camera earlier, you know, the different mutations, they absolutely fascinate me. But what you've got here, which I think is a real credit, is you've got that standard and type across the mutation. Often what you see, particularly in British finches, is when you've got a mutation bird, it will be of a lesser quality than the normals. It'll be smaller, it won't be the same type, but that's not the case here. The mutation birds, there's a fawn cock behind us, which is a stunning specimen.
Yeah, I mean, fawn, clearly have been developed for a long, long time. But I mean, as far as the newer mutations, I don't really dwell on great numbers of those. What I try and do is pick something that I like, and try to put that stamp of, the particular fawn cock that you're speaking about. The better birds, I try to mould those newer ones like that. And of course, it takes time. So nobody really, when I say nobody, I don't really expose those birds till I feel that they're ready really to be shown and be competitive, because that's the challenge that you set yourself. And I do drift in and out of things. I mean, I'm certainly not a mutation breeder. The odd ones that I have had, such as Lightbacks in the early days, grey cheek birds. Lately, black cheeks. I've managed to get those birds up to a level as good as anything else that's around. Certainly in my room. So, that's kind of a job done. But I don't linger on them. If I feel like they've had the time and something else comes through, then I'll quickly jump. I mean, your point about it all looks very regimented, that's because you're here. I spent all day yesterday moving birds around because it was a bit like musical chairs. So with you coming, it's made me clean up a little bit, which is always good, and also put the birds in some kind of order, because, as you rightly say, we're only, I am, maybe a month or less away from starting breeding again. I'm a little later this year because of, you rightly say, a new bird room. I did have some teething troubles with the birds getting used to the room in the last sort of eight months. I feel like now a lot of the birds have been bred in this room, so I'm hoping to get a better start. But the molt was a bit later, which, as you know, I've been putting you off now for a while, because I wasn't really happy with the feather on the birds at the moment. But I did want to get this film done before I start breeding, just in case it upset the birds, So, it's been been a lot of change. I had birds at my parents' home for around about 45 years. I think I've had birds 47 years. So, I've had birds basically in another place, in another room. So it was a bit of a wrench really to move them, and of course, because of circumstances which I really was unaware of, I had to jump fast. So I had some sort of acquaintances of my father's really, who were builders, and managed to get this garage converted. It's a double garage in lickety split time. It was done in about 3 to 4 weeks. So it's been it was a challenge. I'm hoping now to get some relaxation out of it.
But, well, let's hope so, mate. And I mean, a challenge that's been well met. It's a cracking room. It's got everything that you'd want in a room. It's big, it's airy. You've got the big double doors on there. You've got the sink, which is for all bird keepers. It's a kind of essential. It's an essential, isn't it, to keeping Linda happy, that when you're cleaning things in here, you're not cleaning them in the house, or do they get cleaned in the house as well?
I mean, you're right there, but it does bring me. I'd have to mention my mother really, because my mother did all the pots and everything for me, and I did have a lot of really, a lot of help from my parents. They were very supportive, particularly at a young age. And so my father, I couldn't drive. He took me to Phil 1. So. Yeah, I mean, it has been a big change, and it has took a bit of adjusting too. But I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, might as well do it proper. Yeah. Or as best you can. Yeah. I did intend to have a whole set of new cages, but because of the time scale on jumping, and the birds were at a friend's place who was looking after them for me. It was very good of him to do that. In that interim period of basically being thrown out of my mother's house. So everything from that point has been a little bit rushed. Yeah. But I'd like to think now we'll get back into more of a rhythm. Yeah. And the birds will start breeding. As they did at my mother's. Yeah, and that'll be important. I'm fascinated, Pete, by the cages, because it's the depth front to back which fascinates me. Yeah, I mean, that's a novel story. I mean, you might edit this out. It's a bit like... We'll see how it goes. It's a bit like the outtakes with Max and Paddy. But believe it or not, half of those cages, because I was a young kid, I've had those cages since I was about 15, 16. And they were actually pigeonholes at my father's works. He worked at a power station. And it was where people had put the boots and their helmet or whatever. And they must have been throwing them out. I'd just got a new bird room, a breeze block bird room. And these cages just fit in it, perfect. And because they were deep, it gave a bit more space.
Yeah.
And basically, all I couldn't do it because I'm useless at DIY. But all they needed was a rail and a cage front, 2 perches. So when I used those cages and I needed some more, I had the others made at my mother's to match them.
Right.
So it wasn't really an intentional thing. It was a way of not spending, in those days, probably £200 or £300 on cages, which as a 14 or 15 year old, I didn't really have that money, or I was more intent on using that money to buy better birds than I was cages.
Yeah.
And they've been great servants to me, to be honest.
I was going to say, if that's 40 odd years ago, mate, they owe you nothing, and they're still in really good nick, aren't they?
You want to try lifting them? I mean, they are solid.
Yeah.
I mean, I think those cages weigh more than my car, because I know that because the guys that did the building for me, they gladly they volunteered to move the cages.
Yeah.
And we had to get the biggest block of them on top of a builder's van. And I did bet him, I said, if we get them cages on there is no way they're going on there. I owe you, I'll buy you 10 pints if we get them on there. We did, but I think we went round an island, it nearly turned the van over, they nearly put the van on its side. They were that heavy.
Jeez.
That's why they've lasted.
Yeah, they're well made. Right, Pete, let's have, that's brilliant stuff, mate. Let's have a look at some of these birds, and you can talk us through the various different mutations, and then we've got a picture over here of the sort of, a really good Zebby that you bred a number of years ago now, and it still holds up. So you take us through the birds and take us through what you're looking for.
I can do that.
Super stuff. So Pete, we've got in picture here a bird that you bred. When did you breed it? There's a question.
I'm getting older now, so my memory's starting to go. But it's about 10 years ago, I think, that bird was bred, and the difference with it. Comparing to today's birds, I always think of birds over the time I've had them as like breakthrough birds or groundbreaking birds. I'd love to say I had a lot of birds that looked like that in that particular era, but he was a standout one. Never really won anything at the shows, but I suppose that's the way of things. Obviously you need a partner and things with zebra finches, but he really epitomises what people look for in a bird, and I think I was very lucky, or drop lucky in the fact that by looking at the better birds that people had, I got a mental imprint really of what I was looking for and why people's birds were better than mine. And I think that bird, what I've realised over the years, most people go into birds, whether it be budgerigars or canaries or dogs or things, and they can spend a lifetime and don't really actually know what they're trying to achieve. And I think I was really lucky that I seemed to get that indication of this is what we're trying to get to. This is why these birds are better than mine when I was a teenager. Yeah. And if you look at that particular picture, it's very easy with the zebra finch. I think people get too confused with, it's got tipping on its wings, or its tail bars have got some sort of crescent shape. The main thing for me, what I'm trying to do is the type or the silhouette of the bird is all important. And if you look at that particular photograph, it shows everything that even a modern day zebra finch should have. It's got a straight line down the back like a ruler from the back of its head, and a round line underneath like a tennis ball. And if you can get those principles on the majority of your birds, you're not going to be far away from the winner's ring. All those other bits of a little beak and this and the other, I mean, they're not easy to put right, but they are easier. The biggest bulk of the bird is that outline of that bird. And as I say, that bird, apart from a couple of feathers there just sticking up, which is probably the photograph, A good friend of mine did that. A guy who I'm sure you'll be familiar with him, budget of guys. A guy called Mick Freakley took that photograph, and I'll always be indebted to him because he caught that bird perfectly.
Yeah, and I think you make a point there, Pete, about looking at the model, and obviously the birds are feather, aren't they? You've got feather. That's essentially the bird. But there's a picture of you as a younger man in the room with a motto underneath it that says, "Good horses make good trainers," and that was something that was spoken to you, was it?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I mean, I've done very little else really, but over the years I've met a lot of people, and sometimes things stick, in with you, and because when I was younger, you were always striving, as I am today, you're always striving to push these birds further. Fundamental of it really is, it's not necessarily the people, it's what you're working with. And hence, I could take a donkey off Blackpool Beach, or the best horse racing trainer could take a donkey off Blackpool Beach, but it probably in a lifetime or 3 lifetimes would never win the Derby. I know my father had it with racing pigeons. If they can't find the loft, 2 or 3 times when they're old enough to do it, they're never going to do it. So, I think people sometimes think that it's them. But without the ingredients or the stock to work with, you wouldn't be a good trainer. No,
absolutely. And speaking of stock, let's have a little look at some of that stock now. So, Pete, we've got here, one of the things we talked about is showing the birds in pairs.
Yeah.
And I mean these birds, they are massive. And I think you get a sense. I think hopefully in the camera, they're in the show cage. You get a sense of the size and scale of them. But they are incredible. And the cock there's doing that beautiful little thing that they do. He's playing to the mate, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I mean, showing zebra finches, he's kind of. I'm not blowing the trumpet or saying that it's more difficult than showing other birds, but in the UK, we generally have to show purrs. In my lifetime, it's always been purrs. Now, when people think of purrs, you've got to have the same colour, the same a male and a female. So other than Bengalese, who I think in the past you've been able to get away with showing 2 cocks and 2 hens. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong there. But with these things, you can literally breed the best bird you've ever bred, but unless you've got a partner that mirrors it or matches it, it won't win anything, So a lot of the times I know zebra finches or zebra finch people have been seen as poor relations to more established breeds or breeds that are more royally approved. I think it is worth pointing out that it takes 2 to tango, and it's not easy. And I think you'll hopefully see from the film when the birds display, it enhances the shape of them, which is the shape we're looking for, which I think I described a little earlier with the photograph. So yeah, I mean that is part of the art to it. He's not only breeding a pair or getting a pair, male and female, but getting them to match and display at an exhibition, So these birds, like the Canaries, they're pretty tame. So, like wild zebra finches, as you can see. So that's not just about time, really. That's bred into the birds, So when they are being looked at, obviously the judge, whoever's judging them, those birds are almost in a picture frame for them to see. Yeah. If they're diving around or the judge is constantly having to get them off the floor with the judging stick, that doesn't work these days. It's they've got to look hopefully like that. So you can see everything about those birds, the angles, the width, the depth. Any faults on them or whatever, they're there for the judge to see.
Yeah. Incredible, absolutely incredible birds. I'll tell you what we'll do, Pete, if it's okay with you, we'll have a look at some of the other birds. I mean, this is an absolutely stunning pair. I could look at these all day. In fact, I'm going to keep the camera rolling a bit longer so we can see them a bit more.
No, they are a particularly nice pair of birds. I mean, I've had good birds, over the years, and they match anything. Obviously, it's more difficult when you've had birds a long period of time because you don't realise how they change. I have looked at films that are made, not by as professional as you, Matt. But when you look at the birds on there 20 years ago, they don't really compare to the current ones we have. But I guess that's progress. It's not necessarily to everybody's taste, but that's what I like. I like the birds to look like that. Really, I don't think I could show you anything better than those. I'd like to think I've got some that come close to them, but they are a particularly nice pair of birds.
We've got in front of us here, and I talked about the size, and obviously, we put them in a show cage, you can see the size. But I think this truly demonstrates the different in quality from an exhibition type zebra finch and a less exhibition type zebra finch.
Yeah, looking at particularly good exhibition zebra finch, but I think it's not so much, people talk too much about size. Clearly there is a big difference in size, but what also it's everything else. It's features more than size.
Yeah.
And the feather is a different kind of feather. The frame of the bird's big. Everything is bigger, but I really like to exemplify the shape also.
Yeah.
The bird on the right is just like a wild state bird. That's what these birds have been developed from. Not just by myself. There's a lot of people, particularly in this country that I know about, that have made those birds, different to the one on the right. But it is striking as to what can be achieved over, I think zebra finches came into Britain in 1952, I think, which is before my time. But to get from there to where we are today, or where I am today, that exemplifies really what you can do. I don't know where we would be in another 50 or 70 years. Obviously, I won't be here to see it, but it is quite remarkable when you see that example.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is. Incredible, absolutely incredible. And we'll talk as we go through the day, Pete, with you. We will talk about the importance of feather, and we've alluded to it a couple of times. But I think that, that sort of selection when you're looking at putting birds together, it's not just on, you're not just putting two of the same coloured birds together. You're looking at that. You're looking at that balance, aren't you? You're looking at the balance of shape and type, and what you're looking for from an outlet from the offspring.
Yeah. I think that's fair. As I've already alluded to, I got a lot of help or a lot of knowledge from canary breeders. This area that I'm from in the northwest of England was a hotbed for canary breeders. Particularly border canaries. When I started with birds, there were a lot of fanciers. So I got to pick up, information from those people. Luckily, it registered with me. So by using different grades of feather, you could actually alter the shape of the bird or the features on the bird. I think too many people today, probably shoot themselves in the foot because they do run before they can walk, because they see everything as being one or the other. And, most of the time, it's kind of an intermediate feather that you're looking for. As far as pairing the things together, I think, obviously you're looking at feathers. But like anything in life, I don't think there are any magic formulas, because if there were, I've said many times, in my field, the clever people, and there's a lot of cleverer people around than me, they'd all have the best birds if you could just do it off a formula.
Yeah.
Or I'd be able to reproduce, things like the fawn pair or the bird on the photograph, just like replicas. So it's not an exact science in that respect. But what I work off on pairings is pedigree, as in, what the birds are from. I do like to sort of line breed. I'm not really an inbreeder, but I like to line breed with the birds. But my theory, a good showbird is a good stock bird. Years ago it was all about, you put a little cock to a big hen, and the hen puts the type in and the cock puts something else in. I can't remember, but me personally, two good ones, good showbirds, are going to throw nearer, not always, but they're going to throw nearer to producing good shorebirds. I think that makes sense, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know, so pedigree. I remember, you know, a friend of mine, Gary Bagnall in Wales, asking me once. I'd let him have some birds, and he asked me about, you know, was there any particular bird I could recommend on pedigree? You know, and when I looked through my record book, you know, most of the birds now, because I've had them 47 years, most of the birds are bred down off winners. So the kind of, I suppose it's like, if you think of, say, a football team, you know, Liverpool, they buy a lot of top players. You know, the results tend to go better with top players. So, you know, some of it's feather, some of it's memory on what the birds are bred from. But again, good horses make good trainers.
Yeah. So, Pete, what we've got in the cage here is a mother and son.
Yeah, just basically with us discussing various things, you know, with feather and styles of birds. I think what I'm trying to show you there is that bird is a son from that hen. He's not as big as her, but the features of the bird are the same. The style of the bird's the same. He's just not quite as big and maybe not quite as heavy feathered, but just basically showing you that you know, they don't all have to be big. You know, it's not a size thing. It's the shape and feather quality, colour, position. I mean, that's another thing that people don't, you know, sometimes don't see. What you're looking for in a zebra finch really is a balance where the legs of the bird are roughly, like if you're looking at the hen, are roughly in the middle. So there's as much behind the perch as there is in front. So it gives an image or a feeling that the bird's balanced. You know, and yet you're not to see really birds standing up and begging. If you look at the son, he's probably not quite as good for that feature that I'm trying to pass on. So, yeah, you know, there is a little bit more to it than just a straight line down the back and a round line underneath. But, yeah, birds with balance are what we're trying to create.
Yeah. Fantastic stuff. Well, I tell you what, we've got a variety of different mutations in the room, Pete, and you know we talked about the sort of the consistency of quality. So, can we put a few of them up, and you and for those who've got absolutely no clue about the different mutations, perhaps you can talk us through.
I guess I've not got much idea on some of them. They're evolving that fast these days, and with you know what. The combinations of these colours, you know, I don't understand particularly budgety guys or lovebirds and things, but a lot of the time the mutation can look very different depending what combinations of colours you have. So, you know, something like, say, a black-faced, which I don't have, but a black-faced Isabel can look a totally different mutation to, say, a black-faced chestnut flank white. So, yeah, there are a lot of mutations, yeah, for sure.
Let's have a look at some of them now. So Pete, we've got a couple of pairs of normals. This is my knowledge of zebra finches here, mate. Yeah. Are they normals? They are normals. Thank Christ for that.
They're very different to obviously what people regard as like wild bred or pure normals, because over the years there's been a lot of other influences gone in on those birds or the colours. But unfortunately, with these birds at the moment, the tails are not great. So I would have liked them to earn in better feather for you, really. But I think you can see, you know, the outlines of them and the quality of the birds. I hope so. But yeah, I mean, normals really, for anybody that isn't a zebra finch breeder, they're like the backbone of it, really. They're the wild one. And I've always seen them as like a filter or a sieve, a colour enricher. I think everything in the end goes back to normal. You know, I noticed as a kid when I used to go to various places, you know, of the better fanciers, you'd go to these places, and even if they kept, you know, they specialised in pieds or chestnut flank whites, everybody had a normal or a couple of normals, and I used to think, why is that? And I think it's because they're always dipping in to a normal at some point, or the feather to a degree, but the colour drifts. So normals, I think people refer to them as sort of like good normal ends are as rare as hen's teeth and things like that, because it's probably true that over the years they've been the most influential bird on the whole zebra finch population, not just my own. So yeah, they are the wild state ones, and everything really has been spun off them.
Yeah. And stunning looking birds, as you say. I mean, I think it's testament to bird keepers such as yourself, Pete, where you look at these birds and immediately you see the things that you're not happy with, and I look at them and I look at them through sort of admirable eyes, and that's what sets, I think, some fanciers out from the very, very best fanciers, because you're looking at these birds here now, they're looking, in good nick to me. You're looking at them going, I'm not happy about that, and I'm not happy about that, and I'm not happy about that.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is because I've seen those particular birds in tip-top form, and as you've been long-suffering waiting to do this film, as I've touched on before, getting in this new shed and things, and the birds have molted at the wrong time of year, really, which I guess was understandable. So coming to do this film, really, I didn't, I kept putting you off. And I think it's because we got to a point now where I thought, well, I'll be breeding soon, hopefully. I can't really hold it off any longer. But the fawns that you had in previously, they were closer to it. It's the tails, really, that's a problem. I mean, they wouldn't win anything competitively looking like that. The quality of the birds, I think, they'd definitely be more than competitive, but the tails and that, you wouldn't show birds like that. And hopefully some people who perhaps are you're looking at from a zebra finch perspective, would get that. The hen certainly is in good shape. The cock, which is a better bird than the hen, sadly, his flankings and his tail, just wouldn't do.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the things, when I went to Bob Pepper's and Steve Dominy's, and times I've been at Keith Ferry's, and, we as bird fanciers, we recognise that birds look different at different times of the year, and you've got a show bird where you've got that show finish on them, and you want the show finish on them at the show season.
Yeah, exactly.
And as you're coming into the breeding season, you are going to have things that aren't quite where you want them to be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like, I don't know much about, much else in life, but, I'm a keen sports fan, and I suppose it's like comparing people that are competing for the Olympics. They make that a focus, and it's about the timing for that, really. There's no point running your fastest race when there's no medals to be handed out or there's no elite shows. So, I have said that to anybody that wanted to visit here in the past. You better come in at the end of August, September, because if the birds aren't in tip-top form then, I'm in trouble, you know what I mean? Because I've not done my job right. So
it feels like an invitation back to August there, mate.
Well,
end of September, beginning of September.
I'd like to think that the quality of the birds, mirrored what I have at the moment, because nobody knows that. But yeah, I mean, you don't wear your Sunday best clothes all the time, I mean, and these birds also, they need to be. They need to be broken down at certain points where they get a little bit of normality. I think being cooped up in a cage, when you start talking of, months on their own, it's not natural, So I do like the birds to have a little bit of interaction when they're not being shown with each other, and maybe fly around in an aviary for a bit. These birds haven't come straight out of an aviary, but you can see that they have shed a few feathers, so
super
I can only apologise for that.
Nah, I don't think there's any need for that. I don't think there's any need to apologise. Right, we've seen some normals. Let's, what will we have a look at next?
I'll probably put some black cheeks in, males particularly. I didn't do too great for females this year, but I'll put one or two black cheeks in and you can have a look at those. Super
stuff. So, Pete, we've got this is my intense zebra finch knowledge here. I'm looking at them going, hang on, they're all cocks, but they're not. They're not all cocks, are they at all? We've got some black cheeks in here, and we've got. Well, I tell you what, I'm not going to talk anymore, mate. You take over.
Well, what we've got in here, again, some of the tails are not great, but what I've put in for you, I've put what we call a split or a carrier, which is this male at the back, this one here, and basically he's a split black cheek, so he's he's kind of responsible for some of the visual black cheeks because they're recessive. I'll not go into the technicalities because I don't really fully understand it. But the last one to say I do, and it bored me to death when I was a kid. So basically all I'm trying to show you is, from something like a split bird, we can produce full visual ones, which are black cheeks. And also this one, which is, I do have a male, but he's not as nice as that one, a black cheek fawn female. So you can get black cheeks basically in every colour, a bird, and as you can see, they do look quite different. I know, Matt, you've said you thought that there were 6 cocks, but some of the mutations, the newer ones anyway, some of the hens, like grey cheeks and black cheeks, the females also carry a patch, which is kind of a bit confusing for someone first getting them or a newcomer. But if you look at them, really, you can see with various other things, particularly on the fawn female, there's no flank markings on her, so she just has a black patch, basically. But yeah, they're an interesting colour. I think a lot of people today, I know from my early showings, these birds, as in my day, chestnut flank whites were everyone's darling. I think at the moment, certainly the last 4 or 5 years, black cheeks seem to have been the flavour of the month. So, as I say, I've pushed them really.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it, how there are sort of, there are variations of flavours. I know with the red poles, it's sort of the pieds, and then it's the Isabels, and then it's the silvers, and then it's then you don't see a good normal, and then everyone wants to see a good normal again, and I guess it's the same in every variety of bird, I guess.
Yeah, I think with my time in them, there is that phrase, isn't there? Familiarity breeds contempt, and as nice as you can have them, things do wear out let's say, the wow factor. I mean, if birds are winning in my junior days, it was all fawns, fawns for other people that I used to admire. And then for the next 3 or 4 years, it was normals. I think people probably once birds have achieved a lot of success, people want that bit more, which isn't necessarily possible. So they're always being compared to some of the great birds of the past. And that novelty has worked for me several times, where I produced, about 10 years ago, I produced some black-breasted ones, which were a little bit of an accident, if that seems possible. But, they won everything that year. Now, I never managed to sustain that particular colour. But... yeah, people do tend to give extra points for something that they're not used to seeing or haven't seen for a while. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess with us having mutations, it's slightly different to breeding canaries because, there's not too many colour mutations. They're all basically the same bird, other than whites and cinnamons and blues and But with these, you have got a lot of options for variety and changes of... fashion, I guess.
Yeah.
Primarily, I mean, what I'd like to sell, Matt, is, I would never be particularly attracted to a bird because of its colour. If I can get that bird at a certain level of quality, then I'm interested, as in pursuing that colour. But I don't just keep birds because they're a nice colour. That's not something I'm interested in at all. I know people do, and I can understand why they do it, but it's not for me.
No, all about the quality. Well, these look like quality birds. So these are our black cheeks, Pete. What are we going to see next?
I can throw you some... I've got 1 or 2 nice creams, particularly females, and you can have a look at them. Yeah, they're quite novel. I mean, these things go in and out, I think this time last year I probably had a number of silvers which would have been lovely to look at. I don't have too many of them, so I might throw a silver hen in with some cream hens, and you can have a look at them.
Let's have a look at them now. Thanks, mate.
Well, basically, we've got some dilute hens, which, because of feather limitations, I've only got the 1 silver there to show you. But there's 4 cream hens there, which are dilute fawns. The silver ones are dilute normal. As I've just been speaking to you, I have got more of these, but the feather on particular the silver cocks isn't that great. And I don't have many cream cocks this year. I've not had creams now for quite a while, you know, where I've had several to work with. But I've bred these off 2 pairs. I think I've 6 cream hens, which are at that sort of standard. So hopefully in the coming sort of breeding season, I might get back to being able to show, you know, a nice 3 or 4 pairs of creams, you know, of a quality. I think the last time I had, you know, a pair that won one of our major awards was 1991. I've had some good birds since, but not really troubled with them for the top awards at the show. So if these birds do breed to the potential and breed me some males, of course, you know, they should get to where I want to be with them. You know, they had a particular favourite of mine, so
yeah. No, you can see that. I mean, they are really attractive, visually attractive, aren't they? And as I'm looking, there's that sort of almost whiteness on the.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the better example of them in colour-wise would be the one furthest to the right. This bird here. And the reason for that is it's more even in colour, as we call it.
Yeah.
One of the technicalities, I mean, there's always ifs and buts with every pair, you know, but one of the technicalities on these is matching the colour shades between the cock and hen, obviously, and that does cause a bit of problems because you could have a really dark cock, which is a fantastic specimen, and a fantastic hen, but if they don't match in colour shade, it will always drag them down, you know, and we do find, or we have found, the silver's a little bit harder still because that darkness on each bird does lead to more blotchiness, or certainly darker hens than cock birds. So I think anybody that does really well with a pair of dilutes, they deserve it because, you know, they're not as hard as pies, which I don't keep, but they're a little bit more difficult to show than the mainstream colours.
Yeah, no, fascinating stuff. They are, absolutely. They are really eye-catching, aren't they? They really are.
Yeah, I think, as I say, those cream hens particularly, the silver hen, you know, has a lovely head on her. You know, we've not really discussed heads about birds, but there's obviously something about that bird that I really like, and one of the main features is the head qualities it's got, as in the rise over the beak and the back skull and the width between the eyes. You know, I think a lot of people, you know, possibly in most type breeds, you know, they look at birds in 2 dimensions. I tend to look at birds from the old Canary days, you know, to see they've got shoulders on them and look over the top to see that pear shape that you have in a border canary. It's a little bit like the same with these. I like to see down the back of them, and as I say, you don't want something that looks like railway lines down the shoulders. You want something that fills out nicely. You know, it gives again an all-round depth and width to the bird.
Yeah, no, wonderful stuff. So that's this particular variant. Have we got anything else that we can see?
I can rustle a couple of bits and bobs up.
No, look at him. He's a magician, this man, an absolute magician. So we've got an absolute collection here. This is like kid in a candy store here, Pete. And I think anyone watching this who, you know, hopefully who keeps zebras, and I hope there'll be a lot of people who watch this who are inspired by zebra finches. The channel gets reach, you know, all over the world. But actually, non-zebra finch breeders, I think, will admire the style of these birds and the type of these birds. And so, what have we got in? I mean, they're more beautiful things, but that's my naivety in their name. So, what have we got here?
Well, basically, we've got fawn lightback hens and normal lightback cocks. So, as I've previously mentioned, you know, you've got normals and fawns, and things seem to spin off those 2 colours. So, I would love to put in, you know, 3 pairs of each mutation, but because they're sex linked, which again I won't bore anybody with the details of that because I probably don't understand them myself. Certainly couldn't put it across. But what you've got here is you've got the lightback mutation, but fawn hen birds and normal or grey cock birds. In the past, you know, I've had males and females of both sexes, but this last sort of year, or two just haven't bred those opposite ones. And again, maybe that enforces what I said earlier about, showing zebra finches. It's not just like breeding, a good budgerigar or a good 3-part Stark Fife or Norwich. You need two. It takes two to tango, and you get everything for a purr in this game if you do the old quote. So so sometimes it can be very frustrating. The hen on the left, and the left cage, this hen here, type-wise is a superb example of a bird. Again, I must apologise for the tails and bits of feathers here and there, but I think you can see, certainly I could see the quality in the bird on the left. That's, that was a year before then. The hen on the right has actually come out of an aviary, but she was a young hen this last time, quite a late bred hen. I'm quite looking forward to breeding from her. The three males, they're three brothers, so once again I'm looking forward to using those birds in the very near future, and hopefully at the end of it we'll get some crossovers where I get some fawn Lightback males and some normal Lightback females. So that's the plan.
Yeah, and it is always about, it's sort of the long game, isn't it? We've talked about this a lot. I think one of the things, if you think about the bird keeping hobby now, there's always a rush to get to the top, and there's a rush to do things, and actually this is the disciplines that you've shown here over 40 years of keeping this variety of birds. There are no shortcuts, Pete, and this is about, it's about hard work, it's about understanding the birds. And there's an element of luck. We all need a little bit of luck in there. As you say, there's no magic formula that we can copy and follow. But that sort of evolution, and then to do it over the various different mutations as well, that's a real challenge. And I think, when we look at zebras, sometimes, I know in my own fancy and fives, people go, oh yeah, they're dead easy to breed, and my response is always, yeah, good ones aren't. And actually you've got kind of, double the challenge, or maybe even more than double the challenge. And I think for any of us who admire aviculture in the whole world, then this is a variety that we should, we as fanciers should really perhaps take a different look at, and look at the skill that goes in, but also that real challenge of not just breeding one bird, but a bird which pairs to it perfectly as well.
Yeah, I mean that's the challenge you take on, and of course the most important birds, I guess, are always useful to you, because they're what. The turnover on the birds in generations, comes around pretty fast. Sometimes 3 years, 5 years. You've moved on a stage, or you're like a river. It's meandered, so you've got different birds in different colours that are stronger than others. So it's constantly changing. But I think, as I said, the bird on the left, the hen bird, if she was a blue one, it still would be very useful to me, because of the type or the shape of the bird and the features on the bird is kind of more important to use as a breeding bird than sort of winning a rosette at a show because you haven't perhaps got a mate to go with it. I think once you've had them a while, it's obviously frustrating. Many years ago, I had a black-cheeked Lightback hen that was one of the groundbreaking birds. I think it was a daughter, actually, off the bird we saw as a photograph. But I didn't even have a male, never mind a good one, So she never was shown, but it did wonders for the black cheeks that maybe you've seen earlier in the film. So, it's nice to have them to show, but it's more important that the quality in the birds is used for a breeding purpose, really.
Yeah, no, super stuff. Well, we've enjoyed these. Have we got something else that we can see?
I can throw one or two bits in.
Oh, look at this. It keeps coming. He keeps coming. So every time you put a different mutation in there, Pete, I'm like, I like them. What have we got here?
Well, these are a pair of... They shouldn't have named them that, but the name of them is grey cheeks or fawn cheeks. They're sometimes they're pretty hard to determine which is a grey cheek and which is a fawn cheek, particularly if you get two birds that are somewhere in the middle. Those two, I would say, are grey cheeks because of the way they're bred. But I was just saying as we had a cup of tea, these birds, I've not as many of them as I had several years ago, but they have had quite a big impact on not only my stud, but lots of studs, all over the place, really, in other countries too. So I just thought I'd put a pair of these in. Again, they're not in show feather, but the quality in the birds and the features on the birds are I'd like to think are as good as what we're winning the big shows here in the last 10 years. So yeah, they're a colour or a mutation that's particularly fond, or I'm fond of because of what they've done for me. But I don't have too many of those at the moment. But because they're dominant, when you pair them to another colour, you should get equal amounts of cheek birds to say normals or fawns. So I'm hoping that when I first started with them, I was hoping I wouldn't breed any of those and just get the normals and fawns. Now I'd quite like to breed a few cheek birds. But I mentioned the name cheek, just like the black cheeks that we saw before. They can be a bit confusing because the hen carries a cheek also. Yeah. And depending what colour of cheek they are, because you can have this cheek variety in every other mutation. So you can have chestnut flank white cheeks, you can have lightback cheeks, which can be a bit confusing for even people that's had them for years. But the main ones generally are normals and fawns.
No, stunning birds. Even as you say, not in show feather, but really, really attractive things. So Pete, we've got a cage here of more beautiful looking beasts, and something a little bit unusual. So the lighter colour birds in here are
they're what they call chestnut flank white hens. Now, once again, like some of the other mutations I've put in, I haven't got the partners, and these are closely linked to the lightbacks, particularly the lightback greys. So these are actually the females, the nest mates to the lightback grey males. It's just the way they've come out.
Yeah.
But the chestnut flank whites, obviously you see that on the cockbird more than anything. But they are different to what's known as a white, which doesn't carry any markings whatsoever. So these females I probably will use either to grey males or lightback grey males. Now the other bird, which is just on the floor at the moment, but I'll see if I can get him to move. This is quite a rare one even for myself because I've never seen one of these before, and I had to ask people on the continent just what it actually is. And it was a bit vague at first, but apparently I'd never heard of them, but it's a colour called a white cheek. As I say, I thought it was a freak and it was just a washed out bird, but it's off a particularly good bird, and I quite like the style of the bird. So maybe this is something that we'll have a look at and explore. I mean, it certainly won't take much to get that bird up to a level of competitiveness. And it's both its parents, to my knowledge, have nothing in them to suggest why this white cheek as this mutation would pop out. But apparently there are some in Holland, and there are some in Czechoslovakia or somewhere. But it was quite a novel surprise, really. It was something I wasn't expecting. And in 47 years, I didn't know myself what it was. I had no idea.
Yeah, so even the zebra finch man can...
No, I think it's because, continental breeders of these things are, part of their enjoyment is breeding mutations, and the colour side of the birds is more important than anything else. So they would know. I guess for me breeding this one, if it had been an average specimen or a poor specimen, it wouldn't have mattered. As I say, if it had been pink with polka dots on it, it wouldn't have made any difference. So, considering it's quite a nice bird, I will pursue it. One technicality that they have told me is there's not a lot of difference in distinguishing the hens from normal hens. So that might be a problem that I have, where I don't pursue them any further or much further, because if they start interfering with the normal birds and you can't tell which is which, that probably would be an added complication, But once again, if it was a superlative specimen, I'd breed from them, you know, and see what I can do.
Absolutely. Fascinating looking thing, isn't it? Really is. Again, it's striking, but actually, I think I've said that about all of the different colours because they are all striking in their own way.
Yeah, I guess so. And you know, my birds are limited to. There are one or two other things that I have in here, you know, which I'm kind of hoping to get some on the show bench in future years. But there are a lot more varieties. I think we've all already touched on, you know, and they're all beautiful in their own way. You know, I mean, I've always said as a judge, you know, that one thing I would like to do is judge a really top class bird of normal pied birds. I don't have any, but to see them must be wonderful. And it's been a long time, and I've never certainly judged a pair that merit winning a top award at our biggest show. So that would be an ambition of mine to judge a pair like that. Yeah. You know, the contrast of the black to the white and all the markings split evenly. Too difficult for me to take on, to be honest, because getting those markings to line up is a random thing. So I'm afraid you've got to be a little bit of a glutton for punishment taking on pieds.
Yeah, although to be fair, Pete, you could say you've got to be a glutton for punishment for taking on birds because they're not afraid to give you heartache, are they?
No, I mean, you know, I'm only 23. But no, that's very true. I think as all the highs that you can get and all the, you know, the things that make you feel happy about birds, unfortunately, living things, you know, they do disappoint. And I think we just discussed the times when I have had bad times with them, or, you know, had losses with birds, or, you know, birds escaped out the door that was your best one, and all those types of things, you know, you can come back very quickly with them. You know, as quick as you can be disappointed, you can get some real highs from them, and it seems like these things all come in runs, you know, and that's where persevering with them, I guess, pays off at the end. The more disappointments you have, the more you learn to just accept them and move on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Super stuff. Well, listen, we are almost towards the end of the show, and do you know what? It's been a real education. So, Pete, thanks for that, and thanks for all of your time today, and for Linda and her home-cooked sausage rolls, which were an absolute...
courtesy of M&S.
Yeah, she told me she'd made them herself.
She's a liar.
They were incredible. I think, you know, we can often, as bird keepers, we can often look at different parts of the fancy, and I think what's been really evident today is the dedication and hard work over 47 years to produce these specimens, and the quality of these specimens and the consistency of these specimens. And Pete, I know you're an incredibly modest chap, and one of the things you'll say is, but I didn't get here on my own in achieving all of this.
No, that goes without saying. You know, I mean, I recently lost both my parents, and you know, that was a big blow, really, and you only realise, I suppose, like all of us, when they're gone, how much support, you know, they gave to me, and having the birds in their home, really, for all those years, you know, allowing me to do that. And I guess just the general support, you know, but that goes across, you know, the years, really. I mean, a lot of people have come and gone with the Canaries. There's too many people to mention, but one or two of the people that I would like to mention, Mr. Danny Eustace, who is no longer here with us, who kept board the Canaries, was a big support to me. Obviously, there have been many from different walks of birds. I've already mentioned Phil Warren. From Zebra Finches, you know, I've come across some great people, some today, some long gone. You know, and to mention them all, I couldn't do, but I must mention Ken Bamford, George Lucy, Jim Addison. You know, people who are interested in Zebra Finches would know these names. But two or three people in particular, Dave Edwards from Ellesmere in Shropshire, who's helped me through this difficult period with the family loss, by looking after the birds for a while I got this shed up and running. So I couldn't thank him enough. And Mr. Keith Hughes from Stoke-on-Trent, who's been a constant sort of supporter and help to me. in repairing cages and building things and giving me advice and generally being there for me all the time. And I don't think you can really move further away from that. So the last one, because I know I'm going to miss people out, but the Taylor family from Manchester, who as a youngster, got me involved with showing the birds around the country and took my birds from me when I was playing rugby, you know. So without those people, certainly I probably wouldn't have birds today, let alone, you know, zebra finches. So there are a lot of people, but I'd like to, you know, put on record that those people were a big help to me. On Dave Booth with the zebra finches was a big influence. Yeah,
no, super stuff. Well, listen, Pete, it's been a privilege. It has been an absolute privilege. I think, you know, I speak for everyone watching the show to say thanks for your time today. I've certainly enjoyed it, and I've learned bucket loads. And I think, you know, we approach this hobby with an open mind because we can learn from every aspect of the fancy. I've joked off camera with Pete that this is part 1 with Pete Harrison on zebra finches, which basically means I'm stitching them up for a part 2. But that's all right, Pete, isn't it?
See how many boos we get.
Yeah.
See how many thumbs downs we get.
There'll be no thumb down. Listen, if you've enjoyed this, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, share the living bejesus out of it. Until next time, everyone, take care.
Thanks very much. Goodbye.